There's nothing more American than PBS. As a membership organization, our local service is at the heart of our work. Our job at PBS is to support our stations so that local stations can serve their communities. We've been proudly fulfilling our mission for nearly 60 years using the public airwaves and other technologies to help educate, engage, and inspire the American people.
What a crime. Get this criminal off the stage. Welcome to the Doug Channel as we go into the defunding of PBS. This is the head of PBS, where she defends their sterling record, which may have been true long ago, 60 years ago, but today it is just another political organization that none of us should be paying for.
That mission is our guide star and remains just as important today as when the Public Broadcasting Act was signed into law in 1967.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene with what PBS is really doing.
Good morning. At the DOGE subcommittee, we are continuing our war on waste. That means rooting out spending that is unnecessary, wasteful, and frankly, un-American. Today, we are looking at the more than $500 million federal taxpayers spend annually to fund public radio and television. A big chunk of this subsidy flows to National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service. NPR and PBS are the big DC-based entities that create and distribute much of the news and educational content heard and seen on public radio and TV stations across the country. When Congress adopted the Public Broadcasting Act of 1967, it did so because it thought at the time that federal dollars were needed to provide objective news and education content to the entire nation.
Wait, they were paying for objective news and they ended up paying for PBS and NPR? Basically, these are Democrat mouthpieces. I'm going to skip ahead of this video for just a second to get you to the good stuff.
The invention of the internet, for instance, and social media, it's made news and information widely available to those living in remote areas. Americans are increasingly consuming digital media and podcasts. The audience of public radio and television is declining. And I know this because I represent a rural district where farmers listen to podcasts and internet-based news while they drive their tractors. At the same time, NPR and PBS have increasingly become radical left-wing echo chambers for a narrow audience of mostly wealthy, white, urban liberals and progressives.
So we all pay for PBS programming, but only the left half of America enjoy it as unbiased. And I was raised on Sesame Street and The Electric Company, great kids shows, even like Masterpiece Theater or Thomas Sowell would get on there. They do documentaries, but not anymore. I would not watch these shows anymore.
Who generally look down on and judge rural America. PBS News is not just left-leaning, but it is actively uses taxpayer funds to push some of the most radical left positions, like featuring a drag queen on the show Let's Learn, a show targeted toward young children ages 3 to 8 years old.
But let's learn what? Look at that. What are we going to learn?
And we're going to start with our hips. The hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish.
I want you to know I grew up watching children's programming on PBS. And as a mother who raised 3 children, I felt confident that I could leave the room while my own children were watching children's programming on PBS. But I can tell you right now, Ms. Kruger, specifically, as a mother, if I had walked in my living room or one of my children's bedrooms and seen this child predator and this monster targeting my children, I would become unglued. And that is how most parents feel all over this country.
Yeah, about PBS. PBS's brand is ruined. They could have been unbiased. They could have just been quality, but no, they had to push. This is the Democrat agenda. It's out of fashion now, But it was all the rage the last 2 to 4 years under the Biden administration, and PBS was playing a political game with our tax dollars. So now you get defunded, should be demoted, should be destroyed forever. You don't need a public broadcasting system representing just one party. And the idea that they can white knuckle and pretend to be unbiased and pretend to represent both sides, that'll never happen. We know Democrats are incapable of changing their political affiliation because their political affiliation is their religion. Okay, now here's the Heritage Foundation with their testimony.
Besides my own examples, I cite the research of Tim Graham as well as NPR veteran Yuri Berliner, who says, quote, "An open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR." Rather than pause and reflect, NPR instead chose to circle the wagons and assassinate Berliner's character. This is part of a pattern. In 2010, NPR fired Juan Williams and vilified him as a psycho after he dared to flout the network's progressive orthodoxy. The people running NPR remain, in Mr. Williams' words, an insulated cadre of people who think they're right and who have a hard time with people who are different. They went completely off the rails when Donald Trump was elected in 2016. Coverage, quote, veered towards efforts to topple the Trump presidency, Berliner said. NPR hitched its wagon to the false claim that Russia had colluded with the Trump campaign. It also refused to cover the Hunter Biden lab story. After the 2020 riots, NPR firmly sided with those who affirmed, without a shred of evidence, that America is an oppressive society gripped by systemic racism. NPR and PBS even justified looting. Rather than use journalism as a truth-seeking tool, NPR and PBS distorted journalism to further a political agenda.
We're going to get rid of NPR, I hope. That'd be a great waste, fraud, and abuse oversight. We shouldn't have to pay for a government-established political party network. I'm Doug.